Ladies and gentlemen, step one of streaming is unmute your microphone. Welcome! Welcome to the live stream for the ages, where we are going to be talking about, before I go on to just kind of play whatever the fuck I feel like today, because that's the kind of mood I'm in, because it's raining for the 47th day in a row, and I'm kind of like in a blah mood, because I haven't seen the sun in a million years. We're going to go over the wonderful world of streaming, various aspects of it. The core, the ability to stream, or just turning it on and getting it to just stream without, any extra frivolous shit, is not that difficult. It's pretty straightforward, but that's like super rudimentary, and it's not going to always give you the best results. In fact, the majority of the time, it's not going to give you the best results. And there are other things involved with streaming, like how to try and gather a following and so on and so forth, like Xpop was just asking for his fiance. There's a bunch of different stuff, and I've been getting a shit ton. Oh, like this hat is creeping down on me there. There's been a shit ton of people emailing me and asking me how to live stream. Various capacities of live stream. How do I make my stream look better? How do I get the most into my computer? What do I even need as a computer to stream, these settings? Or how do you do your overlays? What programs do you use? What kind of microphones, webcams, it's a big crazy kind of thing. The only people that can get away with just turning on a stream and going are League of Legends players that already just have people that will watch them, even if they were streaming at 240p at 5 frames a second. If you're not in that group, then you've got to do a lot right. If you want to be, streaming, it should be a hobby for everybody first and foremost, but if you want it to be, to be a hobby where there's not just 2 people watching you for the entire time you're doing it, then there's some work to be done. So, yes, we're going to be going over as much of that as we can today. A lot of it's just going to be questions from you guys that I'm going to take. Sculpted walls. That sounds self-explanatory, but it's not. However, I can guess at it, and the thing is, I'm renting this place, so I can't. Jeff, however, could probably get away with it. You did not miss anything. No, you're good. You're good. We're just about to start up. I'm still snacking on stuff. You know me. You know me. So, the most common questions that, or question that I get... Is this going to be like a stale one? Ah, you whore! Pah! Well, that was lovely. Okay. So the most common question that I get is simply just how do I, what software do I use, what hardware do I use and stuff. And that's going to vary from person to person. If you are just getting in, step one to streaming really is, other than having a computer, which is a very important and integral part of streaming, for reasons I'm sure you can figure out, is what software you use to stream it. There are several options. The main two that everybody's going to likely know about are Xsplit and OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. Which you use does not really matter all that much, to be completely honest with you. The main differences are the free version of Xsplit, the one that you don't have to pay, you know, money every couple of years or every year to maintain. The audio settings are shit, and you are fairly restricted in the free version of Xsplit. I believe, unless they've changed it recently, that you are locked into like mono audio, one channel audio and stuff. Even if you have the paid version of Xsplit, OBS provides several benefits. And I suggest to anybody who is starting to stream that unless you plan on having a full-blown production that requires incredibly advanced graphical work, we're talking moving overlays and all sorts of other crazy nonsense, you know, you don't, and even at that point, you're using a different thing other than XSplit. You're not even using XSplit. Is to just use OBS. I use OBS, and I have been using OBS, even though it's still technically beta, for months, and months and months and months and months and months. And in its current state now, there's no reason not to use OBS for your streaming purposes. The main advantages of OBS over XSplit are one, it's free. That's a pretty good advantage. The shit's free. You don't pay for it. I know Jim, and I've worked with Jim with the beta and stuff, you know, working out bugs that I come across and stuff. Jim, who's the main coder, there are several other people. It's an open source program, which means other people can code and send that in and submit it, and Jim can accept it or not. He busts his balls to make a streaming program that is simple, incredibly efficient, and easy to use and flexible. He has accomplished that, and it's still in beta. So it's the second major benefit, on top of it being free, is that it is infinitely more efficient than XSplit is. And when I say that, I mean it is much easier on your computer than XSplit is. You will use far less CPU power using OBS to stream than you will with XSplit. XSplit has game source, which for streaming is basically they're just taking the footage of the game straight instead of screen capturing or screen regioning and using that as the feed. The problem is their code is bad, and they should feel bad. For most of the games. There are some games that they have worked very hard on at the XSplit team in order to make it as efficient as possible. That would be like StarCraft, League of Legends, you know, the big titles that people stream most frequently. OBS just works with everything, pretty much. And it does it equally, like on equal footing. There are very few games that do not just work out of the gate and work incredibly well. Even on my computer, and I have a very beefy computer, there is a performance difference between using XSplit and OBS. And I just recently, as you saw, converted Jeff over to using OBS, and many people mention how much better his stream looks and sounds. And there are reasons for that. Because it runs so much more efficiently, you can use some advanced encoding techniques and parameters, which I can talk about later on, that allow you to really make use of your computer to stream more efficiently, especially with Twitch's new guidelines for streaming. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I just wanted you guys to have the idea of just why I always promote OBS, is that beyond the fact that it is free and very easy to use, it's incredibly efficient, works well with everything, and for 99% of all streaming users, does everything and more than you need as a streamer. So step one is to very likely just pick up OBS, even if you're already using XSplit, unless you really want to get rid of all, or let's get your money's worth if you've already purchased a license from XSplit, is to just start using OBS. Seriously. I'm not getting paid by them, obviously. Jim doesn't really make any money off of it unless people donate. I just support OBS because I support good shit. This is why it's going to be very difficult if the day ever comes where I have sponsors for whatever reason, although I doubt it will ever happen, but if I did, it'd be very difficult for me, for instance, to wear, you know, gaming headsets or use, you know, a gaming keyboard over top of my Philco. You know, that would just be difficult, right? That's just who I am. So, OBS is the program that I'm going to suggest. It's obsproject.com is where you can find it. That's step one. Everything that I show you today on screen will be using OBS. And, but basically anything that I show you in OBS should also be doable in Xsplit. So if you're using Xsplit and you don't want to switch over, that's fine. Alright, so that's the big question down, or one of the big questions is, OBS is the place to start. Okay, you got your program. If you want to follow along today, if you have OBS or you want to go download OBS, then I suggest that you do that. It's not a half bad idea. I will be showing, you know, settings and stuff today. So that you guys can follow along with that. So, the next question that people tend to ask, I'm just going to keep this webcam thing up until we actually start talking about settings and stuff, is hardware. What do I need to stream? You know, how crazy of a system? Do I need to go spend $2,000 on a computer? Do I need to, you know, upgrade a certain component? What's the important things to upgrade if I was going to upgrade something on my computer in order to enable me to stream better? Excuse me. This is where it can be difficult to answer directly because it depends on what games you stream frequently or what games you plan on streaming. But I'm just going to give you a fairly general answer for most of this. If you, I can get with OBS, I can get people with laptops to be able to stream 720 if they're using like, if they're streaming like League of Legends or something. It really depends on what you stream. However, no, the answer is you don't really need a $2,000 computer to stream most games. In fact, you really don't need a super powerful computer to stream. You might not get HD, you might not hit 720, you might not hit 60 frames a second, but you can make your stream look pretty good given what you have. There's very few times where somebody has told me what they have as a computer and I've said there's no way in hell. The general rule of thumb is if you are using a laptop or a desktop computer that's like a pre-purchased kind of like a pre-built rig that's got like onboard video, you don't have an actual graphics card or something along those lines. The graphics card isn't a huge part of streaming so much as it is just your gaming experience, but it is fairly important in that XSplit and OBS, excuse me, have limits, right? They can sometimes they won't be able to pick up the video off of certain things. So there is a line there that you have to kind of be aware of. Generally speaking, onboard video is going to be a no-go for you. Some of them might get picked up, and I want to say XSplit might be better at picking up onboard video than OBS. Jim hasn't really put any time into it because not a lot of people who just have onboard video are trying to live stream. But just to give you the option, if you are that person, you know, it can be possible. It might not be, but it can be possible. The most important part of your computer when you're live streaming is, in fact, your CPU, and to a certain extent, depending on what you're doing, your RAM. When it comes to the CPU, You can stream with a dual core. You're going to be confined to certain games. You can stream with a dual core. The odds of most people having a dual core right now are pretty slim, but again, I just want to let you guys know that it's still kind of possible. You're just going to have to be very specific with what you do. And if there are people out there with a dual core who are saying to themselves, I desperately need to stream, I can make that happen, or I can show you how to do it, but it's not as easy as if you just have a better CPU. So, step one is get yourself, if possible, a quad core. It doesn't need to be the newest quad core on the market. It doesn't need to be, you know, if you're going to get technical, it doesn't need to be Ivy Bridge. It doesn't even need to be Sandy Bridge. Just get yourself a quad core. If you have an older motherboard and you, in your motherboard line, you are capable of getting a decent quad core, then if you don't want to build a whole new computer and you can get it for fairly cheap, then that's your option. You just need multiple cores so that you can really, your gaming experience and your streaming experience don't get hampered too much. Above quad core, it's not an extraordinarily huge difference. The main thing about it is that you want a fast processor, a fast CPU. Somebody with I have a 2700K, which is in just a Sandy Bridge era of quad cores. And my Sandy Bridge quad core will outperform some Ivy Bridge just because I have my Sandy Bridge overclocked. It's faster. It can run faster. So you want a faster CPU. And what I mean by that is, you'll see there, if you're not a tech-savvy person, stock speed might be 3.2 gigahertz. If you're buying a new CPU, it will say 3.2 or 3.3 gigahertz with a boost of 3.9. And that just means that when the computer gets under a lot of load, it'll automatically overclock itself and boost the speed of your computer to 3.9. You just need a fast CPU. That's the bottom line. If I'm going to put it in very simple terms, it just needs to be quick. Other than that, that's pretty much the show. You just need a computer that can play games. If you have a computer that can play games at a good clip, odds are you can make a stream happen. But the most important component in the computer for streaming is your CPU. So that's step two. We've got that down. We've now tackled the software. We've tackled the most important part of your hardware. The secondary component that I mentioned there is RAM. And that's only really important if you're doing certain things within streaming, certain advanced stream settings and stuff. But it's a good idea when you're building a computer these days for a couple of reasons. One, because RAM is cheap, and two, because there's no reason really not to do it, is to pick up like 8 gigs of RAM as your baseline. That will do pretty much anything you need it to do as a gamer forever. 4 gigs you can even get away with, but I suggest, because RAM is so cheap and there's no reason not to do 8 gigs. If you want to do 16, go for it. Anything higher than 16, and you better be doing something crazy AutoCAD fucking epic shit to make up for that. But yes, you can do that. To put this all into perspective, I was able to stream way back in the day with a dual core with 4 gigs of RAM. It's possible. I'm just trying to give you the borderline kind of deal, ideal for getting a good, nice, clear stream. So, that's it for the hardware, really, unless you're including the microphone and stuff, but we'll cover that in a little later on down the road here. So those are pretty much the 2 most asked questions. The question after that, usually that follows, is my internet, or my interwebs fast enough? Excuse me while I continue to eat my yogurt before it goes warm. Delicious. Again, not a straightforward answer entirely. It's situational, but you can make it work. You can make it work depending on what you've got. Here's a general rule of thumb. You either A, need a godlike computer to compress the video to some sort of absolutely amazing levels, or B, you need good enough internet to make up for said computer, or you need a nice combination of both, which is the best case scenario. Twitch TV accepts a maximum of 3,500 kbs, 3.5 megabit per second. I think you can stream more to their servers still, but you're going to be locked out of a lot of stuff, like you won't show up on the mobile, so on and so forth. You kind of castrate yourself. You don't go above 3,500. Before they changed that, you used to be able to get, like, I could get 9,000 to their servers before it capped out, but that's overkill. So, as you know for sure that as long as your internet, and you don't even need that maximum amount, but you don't need more than 3,500 or 3.5 megabits. So keep that in mind if you're in the market for new interwebs and you're thinking about spending $6 million on a new, a new internet service provider or something. Just keep that in mind. Download speed means dick all. It's just your upload speed that you want to be concerned with. So, the question that follows up that is, well, I want to stream at this resolution, at this frames per second. Is my internet good enough? Generally speaking, you will see for a 720p stream, I'm going to talk a lot about 720p today because 3,500 kbs, just as a side note here, 3,500 kbs for 1080p is really not enough, especially if there's any quick motion, even on screen, fast moving stuff. Even if you compress it quite a bit, it's still not that great. So I tend to avoid it now and favor 720p with good compression over top of 1080p with poor compression. I will talk about what you can do below 720p, but I'm just going to talk about 720p because this is the standard that everybody tries to reach for. 720p, you will notice a fairly drastic drop-off without any special compression or anything like that below 2,000. It's possible, of course, to do it at any bit rate, but you'll notice a pretty severe drop-off below 2,000. Most people hover around 1,800 to 2,200 on 720p from what I've seen. 2,400 is another common number, but you really at 2,000 and below notice quite a drastic drop off in quality. And when I say quality, I mean anytime the screen moves, you're going to get blocky, right? It's going to be blocky. So in order to make up for that, that's why I say you either need to have a very good computer to compress it so that you can use less bit rate, or you need very good internet to make up for less compression on the computer side, or you need a nice medium. If you can do both very well, then you're in the God tier. Because it's a bit of give or take. Yeah, when it comes to streaming video, either it needs to be very compressed, or it needs to be given lots and lots of data, lots of bits to make that video happen. So for 720p, I suggest trying to, if you're going to aim for 720, not go below 2000 kbs. You can, and it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm just saying for a good or decent looking stream, 2000 kbs is the benchmark that you want to shoot for 720p. If you're doing 480, or the 16:9 variant of 480, which is 450, you don't need 2000. You can do 480 between 1000 and up to that. The lowest I've ever set somebody's stream in settings to just get a stream out. If you're just desperate to stream and your computer or your internet or whatever is just not there, you can do 480p all the way down to about 800 kbs. It's going to be rough, but it's doable. A lot of people that have asked me how to do that stuff, or you know, how to figure that out, or people that are on, you know, university or college campuses using their internet and their upload speeds are freaking terrible. So, can you go lower than that? Sure. You can stream at 100 kbs. It's going to look like a mosaic, but you can totally do it. It's possible. Nothing is impossible in terms of bitrate. It's just going to look good or bad. You could stream at 360 and lower it even more. But I would say that, honest to God, anything below 500 kbs, even for 360, is going to be pretty painful. Going to be pretty painful. So that's your general rule of thumb. If you're doing 480 or 360, you've got any range. Or if you're going to do, let's just do this again. You're going to do 360p. This means that you're running on a potato and you're streaming through a potato internet. You're looking at anywhere between 500 kbs and 1000 on the high end would be overkill. But if you can't do it on your computer for whatever reason, that's your window. 480p or 450 if you're 16:9 resolution is anywhere from 800 all the way up to, I would say, probably 1600. If you're doing 720, you can start from that 1600 and go all the way up to the maximum of 3500. Anything below 2400 kbs, okay, for 720p, for 480p, for any 160, anything, and you're going to you try and do 60 frames a second, even if your computer's capable, it's going to look bad. There's just not enough data, and there's just not enough likely computer processing combined in order to make that look good. So stick to 30 frames a second, okay? If you can't do at least 2400 kbs. All right. My kbs for 720, I run at 60 frames a second. I use all 3500 that Twitch gives me. Maximum. My old stream was 1080p at 60 for League of Legends and stuff, and for other games I did 720p at 60, and I ran 6000. That's because I was running a single computer most of the time, and I didn't do any extra compression on it at the time, and so I just used my God mode internet to make up for it. Lots of people couldn't watch it, which is the other problem, because it was too much bitrate. But yeah, that's what I used to run. But for this, it's 3500. Buffer is 3500. I don't run custom buffers. I'm going to get into that stuff here in a second when I start going through settings, and I'm going to explain each thing, because Twitch has very strict guidelines now for that stuff. So, those are the big three questions right there that I just answered. What software? What hardware? What can my gear do? Okay? This is the big three. This is big three. Now we're into the finer detail stuff. Well, okay, Adam, so I have a computer and I can make this happen. It's totally, a thing that I want to get into. Now I need to set my stuff up. I need to be able to get this show on the road. All right. Welcome to my desktop. By the way, in case you were wondering, buns of people is the true power. In other words, get your ass out and about, make some friends, even if it's on the internet. So, in OBS, we're going to not worry about this stuff here. I'm just going to go to settings to start. In OBS, just like in Xsplit and everything else, you can set this up several different ways. You can have separate profiles if you want. Most people are only going to have one, maybe two profiles. Because as a side note, just like in Xsplit, you can use OBS to record locally. So not live stream, but record like you would with Fraps, but way easier on your computer. Okay? So, page 1. We are now in OBS. I'm going to put my webcam on here. Just for you guys. That's the wrong one. That's the right one. So, page 1. The General tab. This baby right here is just choosing your language and which profile you're currently working with. This is what I mean by having different profiles so that you don't have to change your settings manually every single time you start a stream. I had one for 1080 at 30 and one for 720 at 60. Local recording for LAGTV. But like I said, for you guys, odds are you're just going to have the one. Name it whatever you want. Name it titty sprinkles. Name it anything you need to. That's just there. The second tab. This. Okay, I'm going to actually change this because this is all set up for local. Put this back here. Encoding tab. This is a fairly important tab. And it is your first step on the way to complying with Twitch TV's new stuff. New guidelines, if you will. You can no longer stream in what is known as a variable bitrate. And a variable bitrate, all that means is that you would put in a quality balance number, like you see there, it's grayed out right now. You'd put in a max bitrate and you'd put in a buffer size. And the stream, depending on what was happening on screen at the time, would increase or decrease the bitrate to hit its target quality, which is the quality balance. That's what variable bitrate did. The problem with that, and why Twitch has changed that, is that you can go from, say, a webcam scene like I was just in, and then when when you switch to a different scene, and say you're playing Need for Speed, and it's going super fast, you're going to go from like 500 kbs, and suddenly your stream, in a blink of an eye, is going to require 4,000 or 5,000 kbs, depending on what your max bitrate was, and your buffer. For people watching at home and for Twitch's servers, that means that there'd be like this very low, like, you know, lull in activity, and then suddenly a huge spike, right? And that's very difficult, and it causes lag for a number of reasons. So that's, I don't need to go into all of it, why it does, but you can see why it might, just in concept. So they no longer use variable bitrate, which means you need to use constant bitrate, okay? The important part, and what Aos just mentioned here with constant bitrate, is that stable connections are now slightly more important in that you're going to be streaming at a constant bitrate regardless of what's happening on stream. You're going to be streaming at a pretty constant bitrate. All right? It's still going to use a buffer, but it's going to be much closer to just staying at whatever you set your max bitrate to. All right? So for streaming on Twitch, you have to have use CBR checked in OBS. In XSplit, same idea. You have to use constant bitrate. Okay? Your max bit rate here, this is what we were just talking about, in terms of your internet speed. Whatever you plan on using, this is what you have to use. Here is a general guideline. If you are only streaming, if you have a very, okay, so step one, do you have a very stable connection? Meaning, does your internet service provider give you the bitrate it says it's going to give you pretty much all the time? Or does it fluctuate quite a bit? If it fluctuates, you're going to need to know what those fluctuations are like. You can use speedtest.net as an idea of, you know, just how much your upload fluctuates. And you can even test it to the areas that you can choose as a server location for Twitch to make sure that you can get that bit rate that you want to that area. Once you know that number, say it was, in this case, 3500, you put in your number and you walk away. Don't dick around with a custom buffer size. It is not necessary. Just leave it. There's specific circumstances that you might change it. It is not needed. Excuse me, there's a more important setting that I will show you later on when it comes to constant bitrate and Twitch meeting the requirements. Just leave the buffer size the way it is, okay? Your audio encoding. Twitch's new guidelines say that if you're going to use MP3, you're only allowed to use a maximum of 128 kbs audio, okay? You can use whatever format you want, 44.1, 48, so on and so forth, but you're maxed out at 128. If you use AAC, which is what I use, you are allowed 160, okay, as your bitrate for your audio. That's all you need to know. An important thing here, and a good thing to note, is that in OBS, I don't know about Xsplit, but in OBS, actually no, it's a lie. I think Xsplit also does this now. Say I chose a setting at any point in time in this process that was outside of Twitch's bounds, what they allow. If I go to the Broadcast Settings tab, which is where you choose your streaming service for Twitch TV, so on and so forth, it's going to tell you at the bottom, hey bro, you done fucked up. You need to change that shit around, and it's not happening this way. Not now, not ever. And it's going to tell you that your encoding settings reduce your audio bitrate to 160. Okay, so OBS is going to hold you, and XSplit, as far as I remember, will hold you by the hand, and it will let you know when you've done something wrong somewhere. Okay, so that's this entire tab done. We're good there. Broadcast settings. All right, so this page is where you choose which mode this is in. You can choose live stream, like I'm in now. You can choose file output only, which means just, you know, recording to your computer. You can also live stream, as well as, if you check save to a file, record at the same time. You won't really notice a performance hit unless you're recording to the same hard drive that your game is happening on, or something along those lines, in which case you might experience some lag because your hard drive is struggling to read-write at the same time. Beyond that, there shouldn't really be a hit, so you can record locally while doing it. That's what I do with my Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic Let's Play, so on and so forth, my other Let's Plays. But you want to choose your streaming service, which is Twitch, unless you're streaming somewhere else. If you're here watching this, odds are you don't. So there you go. The server. Okay, so everybody also says, how do I know what my best server is? There's a couple of different ways you do it. It's the same way, one way or another. In OBS, or in XSplit, I should say, they're going to have a drop-down thing where you can choose your server, and then you can test to that server to see if your connection is good enough. If you're in OBS, you can do this one of two ways. This is also what I would do for XSplit anyway, as it's a faster method. There is a Team Liquid thread. If you were to just search JTV ping or a Twitch TV ping app, you're gonna get the thread it's a permanent thread on Team Liquid. And it's going to run this little baby, and it's going to ping all of Twitch TV's servers. Pinging means just sending information from your computer to their to the servers and how long it takes to get back. Okay? From this list, you're going to be able to figure out what your best options are. Okay? The way that you tell what your best option is that obviously the lower the number, the better. And that goes for all three of these babies. You want to look at your average ping, and you want to look at your jitter. The jitter is just the change from each time it pings the server, how much the time the time that it takes goes up or down. Okay? Basically how stable your connection is to that server. You want to hit a sweet spot between having a really low ping, but also as low of a jitter as possible. You want that to be a very stable connection. So for instance, the two best servers for me currently, if I'm looking at this, even though I'm streaming to you guys using this connection already, is US East Ashburn, Virginia, and New York, New York. Between these two, I have a lower average ping. I also have a lower jitter in Ashburn. Now, there are some times where New York might be 5, 7, 8 milliseconds ping higher than Virginia, but provides me a much lower jitter. Sometimes it'll be like next to none. If there's a very little difference between the two, and both are very low, like 50 and under, I go with one that's got less jitter, because odds are that's going to be the one that's going to give me the most stable connection. Okay? Generally speaking, if you stream to a server that's 50 ping and higher, you're probably going to get frame drops, meaning the server is just going to miss some information. You're going to get packet loss, which is basically what I just described, where it's not getting all the information, it's taking too long. So you want to try and hit that if possible. If you can't, then you just have to suck it up. It's just the way it is. You're going to have to pick the lowest, average, best jitter that you can. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Not overly complicated. You just choose the best one from that list. The other thing that you can do in OBS is that on obsproject.com, if you go to the forums, they have a forum section for plugins that other people write for OBS. One of them is Server Ping. And this add-on plugin, not only does it give you the server ping for Twitch TV, it gives you it for pretty much all of the major live streaming services that you would use. Justin TV, Twitch TV, Vaughn Instagib, Good Game, Dailymotion, Hashed, Cash Play, YouTube, Cybergame. The only one that I can think of that's new that isn't on here would be... oh shoot, what's the name of it? It's a new one in Europe. Hitbox, which is I think a very new one, gives you pretty much everything. So you can use this as your barometer. It's the exact same thing. It just gives you more streaming services in your list. Okay. Once you find what the best option is, you then choose it from this drop down. Done. Okay. The play path or the stream key. This is your stream key from Twitch. You used to get it at a certain URL, but now you just get it at or in your dashboard. So if you're logged into Twitch and you go to your dashboard, at the very end, I believe it just says stream key. You just click on that bad boy. It's going to give it to you. Copy pasta right in here. Done. On Xsplit, it's going to give you an option of using the stream key or just your login credentials for Twitch, as they are directly integrated. Okay? If you're having problems connecting or if there's an invalidation, odds are you're going to have to check to make sure that your stream key is correct. If it's not, even if you copy and paste it directly and you try it and it still doesn't work, just try resetting your stream key a few times. Try it again. Eventually, it will correct itself. This will happen regardless of which program you use. It's just the nature of the system. Okay? This next section is if say you're live streaming and your internet goes down, or the stream, your connection to the Twitch's servers go down, so on and so forth, those kind of things. The auto reconnect function will do exactly what it says. It will attempt to auto reconnect to your server after a given amount of time. Okay, so here it says 10. So if I disconnect during a stream, if I didn't notice, say I only had one monitor, right, and I didn't notice that my stream went down, after 10 seconds it would reconnect or attempt to reconnect, and it would do that indefinitely until I made it stop. Okay, so it's a good thing to keep that going. I have it on at all times anyway, just so that I don't have to mess with it if it does happen. You can make the reconnect timer even shorter if you want, but 10 seconds is a pretty solid choice for what you do. Okay. Video tab. All right, so this is where some of the fun really starts, and where people can sometimes get a bit confused in OBS. In Xsplit, generally speaking, you're just choosing a resolution, and then everything is just kind of goes from there. In OBS, you have two things that you're looking at. You're looking at what OBS is receiving. Okay, so step one, what OBS receives, and what in the preview window, so what shows up in here, how big of a space that is, what resolution. And then the second stage is what the stream is going to get, what it's outputting to the stream. And that confuses some people because in XSplit kind of like jams it all into one thing. Your base resolution. This is what I mean by what OBS has, what it shows here to you in your preview window. Okay? You can set this to custom. I do just out of habit. You can also, if you have multiple monitors, just choose which monitor it's pulling the resolution from. So if my main monitor was set to its maximum resolution, which is not right now, it would be 2560 by 1440. The downscale would then change to accommodate to that resolution. If you have 1080p, same thing happens. So you can just either write it in manually if you know what your resolution is, or you can just choose a monitor. Either works fine. You also get to choose from your list of video adapters if you have multiple, which just means your graphics cards. Odds are it will always show your default, so you don't have to mess around with it. The second part, this is what OBS is going to do to your base resolution, or what OBS has, before it sends it out to the live stream. Meaning, OBS is asking, yo bro, do I have to take your video that's at 1080p, or my workspace that you gave me, which is 1080p, do I have to shrink it before we send that bad boy out? Because if so, this is the time to tell me. So the resolution downscale is just that. You can choose none, which means you're going to be streaming in 1080p. You can choose 1.25, 1.50, and you'll see the resolutions that are associated with it next to that number. Okay, so I want to stream in 720p, so I'm going to choose 1280 by 720. Okay, that's all that is. All right. The filter. This is how OBS tackles that downscale. What type of downscaling it does. And there are 3 options here, okay, that you can choose from. The higher up you go, the more detail, the more accurate the compression, the downscaling, the harder it is on your computer. From my experience, most people can get away with using what I always pronounce it as, and I'm sure it's some like Russian, Czech language word that I have no idea, but I pronounce it as Lanxal. That's the best that you can get. You can try it. If your computer seems to be struggling, you can dial it back. It's not a big deal. You can mess around with it. But anybody I've given this option to doesn't seem to be the biggest deciding factor. The actual encoding settings are the most aggressively difficult on your computer. So you can try that, and if you want to come back and change it later, if you think that might be causing you some problems, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. But all that is how it handles the downscale. All right? FPS, I bet you that you can't figure out what that means. Of course you can figure it out. It's straightforward. It means your frames per second. How many frames per second you're streaming in. All right? Here, I'm streaming at 60 frames a second. Okay? You can choose 59, 58, 42, the answer of life. You can choose whatever the hell you want. It's going to stream at that frames per second. Now, here I'm going to give you a trade secret. Okay? 30 frames per second is great. Most people with a decent computer, like an i5, something like that, whatever, they can get away with 45 frames a second. They can't get away with 50 or 60, but they can get away with 45. 45 looks a hell of a lot smoother than 30 does. Okay? So try that kind of thing. Don't do like 43, 44, The general three that I use or I've suggested to people is either you have 30 frames a second, 45 frames a second, 50 frames a second, because believe it or not, between 45 and 50 is actually noticeable, and then 60, okay? Those are the three that I suggest trying out. Most people are going to want to stick with 30, and that's fine. You want your frames per second, believe me, to be 30 no matter what you stream in, because people will think that your FPS, if it's too low, if it's below 30, is lag, when in fact it's not. It's actually just your frames per second you have below 30. So stick it to 30 and work around 30 first, and if you can go higher than that, do it after that, okay? Disable arrow. Oh boy, this is the one that I have to get out of people's minds if they've been long-time Xsplit users. So, let me explain to you what it means, in case you don't know what disabling arrow means, and two, why you need to do it, or when you might need to do it, and then why you shouldn't do it, and then teach yourself how to do things differently and appropriately. Disabling arrow was a thing in Xsplit that was recommended, and as far as I know, is still recommended a lot of the time. Still recommended a lot of the time because XSplit uses a lot of what is called screen regioning. Okay, and if you used XSplit before, it just means you choose a screen region, you drag a box of what you want XSplit to grab, and uses that as the video feed. The problem with that is that you're capturing the desktop environment in Windows. And with Arrow, which is the fancy Windows 7, Windows 8 thing where everything's like see-through and whatever else, with Arrow turned on, Windows desktop is locked in, regardless of how hard you try, it's locked in to 22 frames a second. Okay? So whatever you see is going to be 22 frames per second if Arrow is on. You can turn Arrow off, and then that gets rid of the problem. However, many people, when they turn Arrow off, experience screen tearing. Okay? And screen tearing is when you'll notice like a line or multiple lines going through video when fast motion is happening, and it's one of the most aggressively annoying things in the world. You do not want screen tearing to happen. So what do? You leave arrow on. And you capture things in a different way, okay? I don't know if you can even do it in Xsplit because I haven't used it in a while, but I will show you how to do it appropriately here in OBS. So do not disable arrow, okay? Before I taught Jeff with OBS to not disable arrow and get out of that Xsplit mindset, you guys probably would have noticed when he was doing, Grand Theft Auto, that the stream looked kind of sluggish and weird. And a lot of people were saying that when I was watching it, and it's because he was using desktop capture, which is the same as screen regioning essentially, without disabling arrow, so on and so forth. So, don't disable arrow. That is a no-no. So with that, that's this entire thing done. That page is finished. Move on to audio. Okay? Desktop audio device. This is essentially your speakers. You 9 times out of 10 leave it at default, okay? You're not going to need to worry about it. Just leave it at default. It's going to work. It's going to be fine. It's going to default to whatever is default on your computer. Your microphone, you can choose from your list to make sure that it's your microphone, because sometimes what happens is that unless you've taken the time to set which things are default for communication devices in Windows, sometimes it might use your webcam mic over top of your actual microphone, okay? So unless you want that to happen, you can leave the desktop audio device, change your microphone to something else. The other thing is here in OBS, and I'm sure you can also do it in XSplit, same idea, is that it's microphone/auxiliary audio. And what it's saying is it doesn't actually have to be a microphone. If you have a sound card or something else, or you have some other audio device that is showing up as an auxiliary device, you can use that as a secondary audio source, okay? But this is generally where people will choose their microphone. If you want to use push to talk, say you have a bunch of room noise and you don't want your stream to hear it all the time, you can, just like in TeamSpeak or any other Mumble or any of your voice over IP services that you guys have probably used in the past, you can set it up just the same way. It's all basically the same idea. You can use push to talk. You can turn, you can choose your keys, so on and so forth, what you want. You can choose your delay, just like you would in those programs. Pretty much all the same. You can also just have a hotkey set up to mute your microphone. So if you, instead of wanting to do push to talk, you just want to mute your mic or unmute it, as well as muting and unmuting the desktop audio, you can choose to do so. It's on this page. You can force your microphone or auxiliary into a mono channel for whatever reason you would want to do that. I have absolutely no idea, but good news, Jim has allowed you to do it. It's there. You can also do audio boosts to both of those devices. And if you want the microphone to lag behind or be ahead of your video or your other audio sources, so on and so forth, you can choose your mic time offset right here on the audio tab. Most of the stuff you don't even touch. This is all just defaulted stuff, and the only thing that on this page that you're really going to be concerned with is the microphone auxiliary audio device. Just choose your mic, press apply, walk away. Okay?